Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be heading over to the Mid-American Conference for some MACtion to take a look at the UMass Minutemen. That's right, UMass is back in the MAC. The Minutemen finished 2-10 last season, and they recently wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with their spring game on April 19th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is assistant sports editor at the Massachusetts Daily Collegian. He is pursuing a major in sports journalism, and he's an avid fan of Boston sports and soccer around the world. He is Cameron Pellegrino. Cameron can be found on X at Cam_Pellegrino. Welcome to the show, Cam.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Well, glad to have you. For those not or just tuning in to the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What got you interested in sports journalism, and how long you've been covering UMass athletics?
Yeah, of course. So I initially started being interested in sports journalism back in high school. Freshman year of high school, I started a Twitter page following Major League Soccer. I was just tweeting all throughout high school, and then became really interested in it. And I committed to UMass because of the sports journalism program, and now I'm just working towards gaining more experience towards the degree, becoming more versatile. And as far as UMass football goes, this will be my first season covering the team. I cover them throughout the spring practices, and I've been following the team closely since I got on campus for the last 2 years. So
Awesome. Well, let's move over to that some football talk. So the Minutemen have hired Joe Harasimiak as their new head coach. Harasimiak had spent the last season as the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach for Rutgers. Before adding the linebackers title to his name, he was just a defensive coordinator in 22 and 2023. Prior to Rutgers, he was the head coach for Maine from 2016 to 2018. What can you tell us about Coach Harasimiak and what he brings to the table for the Minutemen?
yeah, Harasimiak, he has come in and built a whole new culture for this program from the inside out. He has a real straight to business kind of attitude and demeanor, but it's also a friendly one. And, he's only 38 years old, relatively young coach, first real head coaching job. And odds are, if this works out, it could be sort of stepping stone for him onto another program. But he is a defensive minded coach. He was a defensive coordinator. Obviously, that's important for a team that gave up 30 points in 9 out of the 12 games last season. And more than anything, he's just tried to kind of instill like a sense of community and culture in the team. And from what I've seen throughout the spring, he's very focused on work ethic and hardworking environment, those sorts of things within the program. It's not often, honestly, that UMass football has hope around it, but it feels like this is sort of a turning point. There's a different attitude around the upcoming season. And he not only cares about his players on the field, but he also preaches that he wants them to be better people off the field as well. So it sort of just feels like there's a different hunger and energy around this team. And I kind of just feel like UMass struck gold with this hire, and it could definitely bring a lot of success in the near future.
You talk about a lot of new energy around the team. Do you think that's part of that is heading back to the MAC, and actually being in a conference versus being an independent?
I think that definitely adds something too, just to have that sense of competitiveness. When you're an independent team, you're seeing some of the same teams year to year, but you're not gaining that experience. And definitely it brings a different level of passion to be in a conference competing against the same teams every year.
Is there a certain team in the MAC that you think might develop into UMass's maybe rival in the MAC? Or
I mean, Buffalo is one just because Amherst is the town or city both are in. So that's kind of been developed a little bit so far. So that could be.
Pretty cool. Another year, another new offensive coordinator, but we should kind of expect that here with a new head coach. Mike Bajikayan comes over to UMass after serving as the interim offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Utah in 2024. Prior to that, he was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for Northwestern from 2020 to 2023. Can you describe the type of offense that Coach Bajikayan plans to run here at UMass?
Yeah, Bajakian, he has a ton of experience. He's pretty much coached football in every realm there is. He was a part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team when Jameis Winston threw that 30 touchdown, 30 interception year. And, he's coached at every level. And I asked him about how he can translate those lessons. And he pretty much said it's football at the end of the day. It's just speed and tempo that's different. He's just a football guy through and through. And he spoke a lot about fundamentals and the techniques. He wants his guys to be technically sound on footwork, things of that nature, tempo, physicality in his offense. And he kind of said he wanted to coach effort before getting into assignments and schemes necessarily. But as far as the on-field product does go, you can expect him to establish the running game for sure. When he was offensive coordinator at Boston College in 2019, he had A.J. Dillon. That team was the best rushing attack in the ACC, and it was third best in the Power Five. A.J. Dillon got drafted by the Packers in the second round. So his MO is definitely the run game, but he was a quarterback himself. He's been a quarterback's coach, so the passing game will be plenty involved, and it's going to be a balanced attack for sure.
Well, let's get to that position where it all starts on offense, and that is the quarterback. 2-year starter Tyson Pumakan has graduated, so that means the Minutemen will be led by someone new here in 2025. Last season, Tyson suffered an injury in November that caused him to miss the rest of the season. Freshman A.J. Hairston was a starter, while Ahmad Hostin saw limited action, so much so that Hostin ended up transferring after the season to Tennessee Tech. The new staff also brought in Grant Jordan from Yale, a familiar face for Coach Bajakian, and also in Utah transfer Brandon Rose. What did this room look like in the spring, and what are the kind of the expectations heading into fall?
Yeah, for sure. The quarterbacks, they look good in the spring from what I saw. As far as Grant Jordan and A.J. Hairston go, Brandon Rose didn't participate in anything. He had a season-ending torn foot ligament injury at the end of the season with Utah last year. So I haven't seen him play yet in person or anything. He wasn't involved in those spring activities. And then the other quarterbacks are Will Perry and Zach Lawrence. Those guys aren't really in the same stratosphere as the other three. So these three are going to be the competition for the starting spot come August. Hairston and Jordan throughout the spring, they were very on target with their throws for the most part, and they both look pretty good moving out of the pocket. You know, it's hard to really evaluate them in the spring when they're mostly just standing around throwing balls, but the deep ball accuracy was definitely much improved from last year, and it'll provide a much needed spark for the Minutemen and probably some explosive plays that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
With Brandon Rose's injury, do they expect him to be available come fall camp?
I believe he will be, yeah.
With the new staff and Brandon Rose following them over, do you think it gives him a leg up heading into the competition in the fall, or do you expect that it'll be a Grant Jordan or Hairston?
Personally, me, from what I've seen, I think Grant Jordan has won the job at this point in time. He's just been so good moving out of the pocket. He's athletic. He can scramble. Brandon Rose is a good player, and I haven't seen too much of him yet. There's not a whole lot of film. He made one start last year. He played against number 9 BYU, and he only lost by a point in that game. So obviously coming to UMass, that's a lot of good experience. And he definitely will have something to say in this competition. But right now, Grant Jordan, from what I've seen, is the guy, just the way that he moves, the way he can extend plays, which is something that this team very badly needs, especially on those third and long scenarios. And when it comes to A.J. Hairston, you know, he looked great last year. He had a great end of the year. He 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. And these two guys have come in and kind of stole his job. So he's going to be very motivated in this competition as well. And I think these 3 guys can be battling all the way until the start of the season for that job.
Moving over to the running game, and similar to 2023, the Minutemen see their top 3 running backs from 2024 hit the portal. C.J. Hester is off to Michigan, Jalen John is off to Coastal Carolina, and Brandon Campbell still looking for a home. The Minutemen will be looking to replace 295 carries, 1,358 yards, and 12 touchdowns in 2025. Jackson Paradise, Cookie Desiderio, and Damarian Alberic all return in 2025. Joining this group of guys is Rocco Griffin from UTSA, and Jawan Price has been added after the spring to this room. It's obvious that this room will look a bit different in 2025, but can you help us better understand this room and what the expectations should be?
Yeah, so Jackson Paradis he just medically retired, so he's not going to be returning. He's been replaced, though, by a brand new transfer acquisition they just got from Colorado, Deion Sanders' team, with Brandon Hood. Hood is a very speedy guy on film, and he's definitely going to help this team a lot. Another guy in the room is Godson Ofanagoro. He scored a touchdown this spring game. He probably won't be in the mix for a ton of carries, but I think the running back room is going to be a little bit less committee based. I think the room belongs to Rocco Griffin at this point. He's a pure, powerful workhorse back. I think he's going to fit right into this team perfectly. He has legit SEC experience. He took carries against number 2 Alabama, number 2 Georgia. You don't get to that spot by accident. And especially coming to a team like the Minutemen here, I think he's going to excel. His best trait is definitely his ability to bounce off the first tackler. He is not easy to bring down at all. And he also has great breakaway speed. He hits those holes. So I just have a hard time believing that he won't be able to run all over MAC defenses. And he'll be taking the bulk of the carries, but Hood will definitely get a lot of looks. Jawan Price, who you mentioned, also will definitely have a say in that backfield. And also, as far as the receiving backs go, I think Price could be that receiving back for this team. There isn't anyone that's a proven pass catcher out of the backfield, but he caught 26 passes for New Mexico State in 2021. And with the other 2 guys being more pure runners, I could see him developing as that passing back for sure.
Well, similar to the running game, the wide receiver room will look a bit different too. Only 34% of the wide receiver receptions are returning for 2025. This room is highlighted by the return of Jaquan Gibson and Ty Harding. They also added Jake McConaughey from Pitt and Tyreek Kelly from South Florida. How did this unit look in the spring?
Yeah, I would say the receivers honestly flashed the most out of any position in the spring. There's a lot of options here, and my standout was probably Tyreek Kelly, at least from the spring game. He just showed up in the spring game. He had a 79 yards. He made this one 34-yard grab. That was incredible. He's coming off an MCL sprain at USF. He's definitely poised to take on a bigger role in the receiving side of things. Jaquan Gibson looked sharp. He always has great springs. I know you guys talked to Mike Maynard last year. He always says Jaquan Gibson has great springs. He hasn't quite put it together yet, and as far as the season goes, but I think he can make that next step, and that would be huge for this team as well. And Jake McConaughey, you mentioned from Pitt, he's also going to be a huge help for this offense. He's the biggest build on this team at receiver. He's 6'5", 215, and he's not really a go up and get it kind of guy like Gibson is, but he is a great route runner, and he can run good routes down the middle of the field, post routes, corners. I think he's going to be a big help for sure.
Well, the biggest loss for this team is undoubtedly Jacoby Keeney James, who graduated this past year. He accounted for 86 targets, 51 receptions, 870 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Who do you think will step up and be the lead wide receiver for this offense?
Yeah, Keeney James, you mentioned he just signed with the Detroit Lions. He was the entire receiving corps last year. The second guy behind him, yards-wise, was Ty Harding, and I think he is going to have to step up and be that number 1 here. The drop-off was huge. Keeney James had 870 yards, and Harding had 500 yards less than him as the second leading receiver on the team. He's been a long play kind of guy, whether that's punt returns, taking long touchdowns to the house. But I would love to see him get more involved in the short game, be more of a volume receiver kind of guy, because I think he can take that next step as this number 1 receiver.
Well, given all that production that's needs to be replaced, how do you see the week 1 lineup kind of shaking up there?
Yeah, my top 4 for sure would be Gibson, Harding, McConaughey, and Kelly. I think the race for that 5th spot is definitely a lot closer. There's a lot of options. They just picked up another guy 2 days ago, Donnie Gray out of Northwestern, another receiving option. I think my choice right now for that 5th spot would be Kezion Dia-Johnson. He was the 3rd best recruit UMass has ever gotten straight out of high school. He didn't really play last year in his freshman year, but I'd love to see the youth have a chance in this offense as well.
With the coaching change, what have you been able to learn in terms of how the tight ends will be utilized in this offense?
Yeah, the tight end group, honestly, until a few weeks ago, was looking pretty bleak. They had a lot of guys who aren't really pass catchers, couldn't run routes, didn't have great hands. They did go make up a huge pickup from Rutgers, Matthew Ogani. He is a huge pickup for this tight end room. He is a route runner. He played some receiver in high school. He is practically a receiver, but I think that is one of the most crucial transfer commitments they've gotten so far because it fills a hole they so badly needed to fill with being a pass catching tight end. And this is a guy that moves like a receiver with the ball in his hands. He's 6'5", 236, but you wouldn't really be able to tell when he's running routes and with the ball in his hands. So as far as the rest of the tight ends go, it's kind of just all blockers. There's not a whole lot else to highlight there, but Ogani is definitely the guy to watch in the tight end room.
Well, heading into 2024, the offensive line was looking to replace 3 starters and lost 2 rotational pieces. In 2025, the offensive line graduates 4 guys, so this 2025 line will lean more on the experience of Benjamin Roy Jr. and Ryan Mosesso. Roy Jr. provides some flexibility for the Minutemen as he played center and both guards positions a year ago. Mosesso mostly played right tackle last season, but has flexibility to play either tackle spot. How did this unit look in the spring, and do they gel? Do they seem to gel for you?
Yeah, so we had a chance to talk with media with offensive line coach Kurt Anderson, and he's definitely had this group gelling in a great way. He actually coined a name for the offensive line called the Militia, spelled MOL, Militia, and that represents Massachusetts offensive line. And he just basically that means he just wants the group to be ready to fight at the drop of a hat on game days, as if it was a militia fighting in the war. So he talked about he doesn't really believe in like a lead by example in the O-line room. He wants everyone to be vocal leaders and kind of leading by example. He said is just the bare minimum. He wants all those guys to go and do that next level. And he also talked about the word finish. He wants guys to finish through the play and from the snap to the echo of the whistle. And I think it seems like he has these guys ready to play, but there really are no starters being named quite yet because there's such a wide variety of guys.
Is there one guy that maybe you think they count to or look to as the leader in that offensive line room?
Yeah, I definitely have to say Ryan Mosesso. He is the guy that's the main holdover for this team. He was playing right tackle. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move over to that left tackle. Obviously, you want to protect the blind side of your quarterback here. And I think he is that leader that is going to help all these guys. A ton of transfers came to this room as well. So just kind of understand this offense and this team as a whole.
All right, if you had to pick one offensive player to have you can pick more than one. If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
I'm going to go with Ogani, the tight end who we just talked about a little bit. You know, there's a lot of guys that already record stats in that receiver room and even at running back. So they're not as much of a breakout. They're more expected. But I think this guy comes out of nowhere. He could really be an X factor for this team. I haven't really spoken to anyone about him within the team and his expected role, but just from what I've seen on film, I feel like it would be a mistake not to have this guy out there running routes.
Well, let's move over to the defensive side of things, and we talked about coaching changes earlier, and obviously with a new head coach, as you might expect, there's a new defensive coordinator here for the Minutemen. Jared Kite comes to UMass via Rutgers, where he served as the Nichols coach in 2023 and 2024. You might say he is Harris Simiak's right-hand man, as Kite was also with Coach Harris Simiak at Maine from 2016 through 2022. Can you describe the defensive scheme that Coach Kite plans to run here at UMass?
Yeah, it's not 100%, certain exactly what he's going to do on this defense. We asked him about his tendencies, and he kind of said he doesn't have many years of developing tendencies, and those will come with time. For defenses, the spring tends to move a lot slower than offenses, and that they need to form the sense of, being a cohesive unit before they move on to schemes and understanding everything else. And there's just kind of an understanding between teammates in any good defense. So, I mean, I don't have a set answer yet on exactly what he plans to play, but we can talk about the personnel and kind of how that will shape what he hopes to run. I know we're going to get into that in a minute.
During the spring, when there was 11 on 11s, did you see like mostly 3 down linemen or 4 down linemen, or was it a
Yeah,
mix of both?
there's definitely more four down linemen for sure.
Gotcha. Well, let's dig into those position rooms that Coach Kite will be coaching. And let's start with the guys up front along the defensive line. This group will need to lean on the experience of the guys on the interior and Tim Grant Randall and Chambray Jackson. How did this defensive line look in the spring for you?
Yeah, those two guys you mentioned are these interior guys for this team. Grant Randall and Jackson are going to be the two starters here for sure. Grant Randall is the guy that sets up as the nose tackle if you need him to in certain sets. If you in the 4-3, if they run that, you want him right in the middle in the center. And then Jackson, he was more of a defensive end in the past. He initially committed to Florida State as a 4-star actually, but he's versatile and he's kind of landed more as a defensive tackle here at UMass. and there's not really a whole lot of proven depth behind them. There's some older guys, but none of them really appeared in many games. So that's something that's going to have to develop. But those two guys are the leaders in that spot, and they're going to need some depth guys definitely to show themselves.
Well, whether it was the portal or the graduation, UMass lost a lot of production from the defensive end or edge. Who is ready to fill the shoes of Luce Julian, Kofi Asari, and Jalen Hudson?
Yeah, any talk about this UMass defense in 2025, the first player that anyone mentions is Joshua Nobles. This guy is the real deal on the edge. He's going to be the star defensively. He had 10 sacks and 12 tackles for loss last year for Jackson State, and he's pretty much exactly what this team needed in this spot. The pressure has not been great for UMass in the last few years. They didn't have many sacks at all. They had like 16 sacks all year last year, and that's not good enough for a team that wants to win games. So I think that Nobles is going to be that star. You need him to get those 10 sacks or whatever. And then on the other side, they have David Anaha. He came in from Rutgers. He's one of those guys that Harris Simiak and other coaches that came from Rutgers brought with them. They didn't bring that many from Rutgers, but he was one of them. He's going to have definitely a chance to break out, especially on the opposite side of Nobles. He's going to have a lot of focus on him. So whoever's on the other side is going to have chances to get to the quarterback. And then there's Aquan Robinson on the other side, Zakuto Iguanagu, but there's not a ton of proven depth on these edges either. So that will come with time as well.
Who are you excited to kind of see take that next jump or take their game to the next level here for the defensive line in 2025?
Yeah, I feel like there can't really be an answer besides Nobles here just because it feels like he's a guy that can completely change this team defensively. I feel like the way that he's being hyped up, it would be a disappointment if he didn't get to double-digit sacks in the year. So I'm just excited to see him play, get after the quarterback. In the spring game, he had 1 sack, but Harris Simiak said he probably should have been credited with 3, if there were actual rules in tackling in a spring game. But just him being able to get home, it opens up so many different things in the coverage aspect, and you can get safeties moved around different ways as well.
Let's move over to the linebackers room, and Darian Craig and Tyler Martin are the only 2 guys who registered snap with the Minutemen in 2024 that are returning for this upcoming season. The staff also added Timmy Hinspeter from Rutgers and Dean Schaefer from Yale. How does this group replace the likes of Jalen Stewart and Jarrell Johnson, and who stood out for you?
Yeah, I'd say the linebacking room is probably where I have the least positive things to say about this team, just because I don't think they did a great job so far shoring up that position in the portal. Obviously, there is still time, but I do think Timmy Hinspeter is one of those few players that came over from Rutgers, and he definitely can make a difference on this defense alongside the returners, Tyler Martin, Darian Craig. Craig probably is the most important linebacker to this team right now. He had 44 tackles last year. He was huge in the middle for them. And Dean Schaefer, he's another guy that you mentioned, Ivy League guy. He's one of those graduate Ivy League guys. That's been a trend for them here. They try to get guys want to go to Ivy League schools for 4 years. They can come over and play for another school in their 5th year after they get that Ivy League education. Ton of those on this team. Schaefer's one of them. And he played 4 years at Yale, team captain last year. Definitely can bring some leadership. And then same deal with Marquez White, came over from Dartmouth, graduate. He played some linebacker and defensive line during his time. So he's dealt with some injuries, but he has had some good seasons. He had 5 sacks in a season 1 year. So those are definitely guys all to watch there.
Well, we've talked about these position rooms looking different here in 2025, but none may look more different than this defensive backfield. This room is highlighted by the return of safeties Jeremiah McGill, Jalen Harrell, and cornerback Ryan Barnes. Given all the turnover in this room, what should we expect from this secondary heading into 2025?
Yeah, it's pretty much a whole new room here. There's a ton of transfers coming in. Zeron Daniel is one of those transfers. He came in from Georgetown. Ton of FCS guys. They brought in Malcolm Green, who has ACC experience. He played for Clemson. He played for Virginia. In the spring game, there are a couple of guys that stood out. J.C. Clark, Cameron Watkins-Hunter, Michael Pangaro had an interception in that spring game. There's just so many guys to choose from. They also brought in another 2 transfers recently. They brought in another one today in Zach Ferris. So there's just a lot of options. They're going to have to weed through and find the best guys in this group.
For the guys you were able to see in the spring from that transfer group, which of them do you think is set to make the biggest impact in 2025?
Yeah, I think Sexel is going to be a great guy. FIU, J.C. Clark, Cameron Watkins Hunter, definitely they great breaking on the ball defensively. They made a ton of big plays in that spring game, and I think those two guys are going to be breakouts in the cornerback room.
Well, breaking down the secondary, it really seems like the cornerback room, like you said, a lot of turnover, a lot of change with Ryan Barnes, the only one returning from the 2024 team that took a snap. Is there anyone that kind of stood out for you that kind of looked like maybe they were ready to join him on the other side of the field?
Yeah, I think J.C. Clark is probably the answer here. He is great breaking on the ball, as I said. I think he could be that number two. Watkins Hunter also could be that number two. So throughout the summer, they're going to have to figure that out. But there's a lot of options here.
Well, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
I think I'm going to go with Zeron Daniel here, Georgetown transfer. He hasn't proven himself yet in FBS, but he was great in FCS. He had 5 interceptions last year, 7 total across the last 2 years. And on film, he's just a guy that's always in the right place at the right time. And it's not luck, it's football IQ. He knows where to be. He's very patient, very calm, great tackler. He takes good pursuit angles, and he's kind of just the full package. He stops the run. He can play man coverage. Could definitely see him playing some corner as well, but he'll probably start at safety. Very versatile guy. I think that's what this team needs is guys that can make a difference in all sorts of plays.
Well, we've talked offense and defense. Let's move over to the special teams and how do those special teams units look this spring, and are there any concerns?
From what I've seen, kicker position, Derek Morris won the job. He's more accurate. He's got more leg. Marcus Lai is the other guy here. He came from Northern Arizona, but Morris has a much better kicking record in his past. And when it comes to UMass and kicking, there's always going to be concerns. But honestly, I have a hard time thinking it can be any worse than last year with Jacob Lurie. So I think they're going to be much better off this year. Morris did well in the spring game as well. Lai missed a big kick, so obviously that's going to remain in your head if you're coaches. In the punting game, Keegan Andrews, he looks good. He was booting the ball in the spring game as well. I think he's going to fill that hole nicely. Should provide some good defensive field position for this team when they need it. And just to shout out the long snapper, Giovanni Bourbon, they brought in as well. He was the number one ranked JUCO long snapper in the nation in 2021. He played at McNeese State, so filled that position as well.
It's always good to give the long snappers some love because no one knows who the long snapper is
Exactly.
or even thinks about him until he messes up. They don't think
Right.
about all the times does something successful.
Exactly.
Now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into 2025?
Yeah, I kind of already alluded to it, but talent-wise for me, it's linebackers. Depth-wise, I'm going to say tight ends. I think the linebacker core, I think one elite addition in the portal, if they could secure that somewhat soon. I feel like they're just kind of missing that do-it-all guy in the linebacker room that can kind of make tackles, hold his own in coverage. And, if they make that one addition, I think it changes this room completely. Tight ends wise, it would be nice to just have a second guy who can catch a pass. You can rely on a little flat route or something, but it's not exactly clear who else is going to be running routes besides Ogani.
In today's age of NIL revenue sharing and the transfer portal, how has it changed recruiting philosophy?
Yeah, no, it's tough to judge considering it's a new regime coming in here.
Sure.
Most of the influence probably is from the new staff and the new culture being built. But with that being said, the NIL budget this year, drastic increase. It's reportedly 2 million, and that number is expected to rise to 3 million next year. Those numbers are top of the MAC, probably somewhere right around the top of the MAC. And so this team's starting to legitimately invest in themselves. And I think some of the transfers you've seen coming in are direct product of that. And the Ivy League pipeline I mentioned, that's all the Ivy League schools at every position. That's definitely been a focus for these guys. When the basketball team at UMass has veered more towards JUCO and D2 players, I feel like the football team is getting more guys from top FBS programs across the country and improving at every position.
Although it's kind of early, like you mentioned, how do you feel the staff at UMass has done navigating the portal?
Yeah, they're near the top 20 in commitments in quantity in FBS so far. They've 34 commits and counting. They've done absolutely everything they can to address every possible position of need. And I feel like this is just a commitment to success we haven't really seen out of this team ever. And there's still plenty of time to pick up players, but I feel like the core of this team has been built and, ready to compete in the MAC. Like you said, just the competition aspect and definitely just gives a different energy and vibe off. And there are some spots we mentioned that could use some talent, but I think this Harris Simiak rebuild is going better than anyone probably could have hoped in his first few months at the helm before they've even played a game. I mean, he just got here, he jumped straight into it, and it's been just full steam ahead.
What do you think the main strength of this 2025 team will be?
I think in general, speed and athleticism is a huge strength to this team. I feel like one of the main issues for UMass in past years has been the inability to match the athleticism and compete up to the level of their opponents. And I think just having that speed and athleticism at its core can keep you in games that you wouldn't be in past years. And I think one of the other strengths that can't really be understated is just the shift of the culture and the mentality aspect. I think that has a lot more of an impact than many people might realize. These players want to have motivation. They want to play for the guys next to him, have a coach that believes in them, play for him. There's definitely just a different energy, like I mentioned. And I think that energy around this team has the power to sort of change the direction of this program entirely and start a fresh new era.
Given the change in coaching staffs, what and going to a new era in the MAC, what does success look like for the Minutemen in 2025?
Yeah, everyone has a different definition of success. I think that's definitely true. But I don't think the history of losing can be an excuse this year. I feel like success means actually going and achieving something, not just improving your win total to, 4 wins for the first time in 7 years. I think to me, to have a genuinely successful season in 2025, you have to make a bowl game. They haven't made a bowl game since joining FBS in 2012. They're one of just 3 programs that can say that. And I think you do need to, although it's hard to separate the general feeling and understanding of UMass football and losing football games, I think you kind of have to separate that from the upcoming team in 2025. They're 26 and 122 since joining FBS. Obviously not ideal, but I think with the NIL budget this year, I mean, the starting depth chart has about 5 returning players that are starters. This entire team is different. They've improved at nearly every position. And, that's the case in college sports a lot of times these days with the portal is it's an entirely new team. But I think in this case, it's a very good thing. And, with all of these facts, the NIL budget, they're actually committing to this team. I have a hard time saying that another year, just that continued mediocrity should count as success. I think they need to push for those 6 wins and make a bowl game.
Well, Cam, we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 UMass Minutemen football team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a I'll believe it when I see it sort of thing, right? It's like you can say all this before the season, but at the end of the day, UMass football is an 18% winning percentage since they joined FBS, and they've been the laughing stock for quite a while. But I do think this team has the tools to make a bowl game in 7 months' time. And, it might make me look silly and they might fall into the hole of just being another lethargic football team that college football fans continue to make fun of, but it's just a wait and see kind of game at this point. There's no telling if the talent will come together and create wins in 2025, but I'm just saying that the talent is definitely there. There's definitely an unprecedented support and commitment on the inner workings of this team that's never really been seen before. So whether it's this year, a few years down the line, I do think this program does have a positive spin to it coming very soon. But yeah, that's all I got. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, Cam, thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Of course.
you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.